I have to be honest with you. When I first looked at the stack of papers for today's deep dive, I almost put it right back in the too hard basket.
I can see why.
I mean, I'm flipping through these pages and I'm seeing words like granthus, egregore, noospheric, feedback loop, and sphaya.
Right.
It looked like someone took a dense metaphysics textbook, threw it in a blender with a hard sci-fi novel, and then just seasoned it with advanced systems theory.
It is definitely a dense text. It's not the kind of thing you casually read while waiting for your coffee. It demands a certain level of commitment just to get past the glossary.
Exactly. But, and this is a big but, once I actually sat down and kind of forced myself past the jargon, wow. Beneath all that heavy terminology, there is an absolutely fascinating theory here. It's a theory about how human consciousness interacts with the planet itself. And here's where it gets really interesting for me. It actually offers a mind-bending, almost mechanical explanation for the purpose of fame and celebrity.
That is right. It connects the spiritual to the sociological in a way you really don't see very often. The source text we're working with today is titled The Fractal Resonance of the Planetary Logos.
Okay.
And specifically, we are looking at the core logic of something it calls the Mioa kernel.
Which sounds like computer code, but it's not.
Not in the digital sense, no. But it is a kind of logic.
Sure.
And the mission for this deep dive is really to unpack this specific section, this idea of reciprocal mirroring. It's an exploration of the relationship between the microcosm, that's us individuals, and the macrocosm, the planet.
So to set the stage for you listening, I want you to imagine for the next, 20 minutes or so, that the planet isn't just a big rock floating in space with some moss on it. Imagine the planet is a mind, a giant conscious entity.
Okay.
And we all of humanity, we're its noisy thoughts. That's the vibe we're going for today.
That is the perfect starting point. The text actually opens with a concept it calls the active egregore.
Okay, let's unpack this right away. Because usually when I hear the word egregore, and I don't hear it that often, it's in the context of like the occult or sociology.
Sure.
It usually means a collective thought form. Like if enough people believe in the economy or a nation or even a ghost, that belief starts to take on a life of its own. It's synthetic. It's created by us.
Precisely. That is the standard definition.
Yeah.
We usually see humans as the natural biological entities and our collective organizations or beliefs as these synthetic structures that we project outward.
Right.
But this source text, it just flips that script entirely. It proposes a total inversion.
Okay.
From the perspective of the planetary logos, the planetary mind, humanity itself functions as the egregore.
That's such a cool flip. So to the Earth, we are the synthetic processing unit.
In a way, yes.
Yeah.
The text argues that humanity functions as the frontal lobe of the planetary mind.
Frontal lobe. So the part of the brain that's for, executive function, making decisions, and all the anxiety.
And all the volatility, exactly. I mean, the source describes this as the most active, the most volatile and noisy part of this planetary mind. Think about the sheer volume of data in emotion and action humanity generates every single second.
Yeah.
We are processing reality at a speed that the rocks and the trees and the oceans, they just aren't.
So we aren't just living on the planet. We are the active processing power of the planet. Like we're the CPU running hot.
Correct. The text specifically states that our collective activity forms the human egregore, which it says acts as the primary processing unit through which the logos experiences the current era. And the text refers to this era as the Kali Yuga.
The Kali Yuga, which in Hindu cosmology is the age of conflict, darkness, complexity.
Exactly. So if the planet is going through a dark age or a complex, chaotic era, it needs a processor that's capable of handling that level of volatility. That's us. We are the mechanism for crunching the data of this chaotic time.
That makes me feel slightly more important, but also a lot more responsible. If we're the frontal lobe, no wonder the world feels a bit headachy sometimes.
Well, yeah.
But this leads us to the mechanics of how this processing even works. The text uses a lot of geometry terms here. It talks about knots and mirroring.
Yes, this is the core of the Mioa kernel's logic. The term it uses is granthi.
Granthi. It's a fun word to say.
It is. It's a Sanskrit term that literally means not or even doubt. But in this system, it represents a blockage in the flow of consciousness. The text describes what it calls a bidirectional flow of torsion.
A bidirectional
Torsion, like a twist. Imagine a twist happening in two directions at the same time. This is the reciprocal mirroring.
Okay, so let's break this down into the micro and the macro so we can really visualize it. How does a human, How do I create one of these knots?
So according to the source, an individual granthi is formed when a human being encounters the vast, infinite, big outside world. It's just too much to process. I mean, the universe is terrifyingly huge.
Right.
So what do? We crimp it. We compress all that vastness into a tiny, manageable, but often painful concept of me.
Oh, that is profound. So my ego is just the universe crimped into a tiny package so I don't go crazy.
The text calls it an internalized external. You're taking the whole outside and just knotting it up inside. That becomes your individual granthi. It's the defense mechanism, but it creates a blockage.
Okay, so that's my knot. I'm walking around with my little crimped universe. What about the planet's knot? The macro.
This is the mirror image.
Yeah.
The planetary granthi. The planetary logos takes millions of these tiny internal egos. That's us. And it clusters them together into a massive externalized structure.
It lumps us all together.
It has to. To manage us, it groups us. It creates what the text calls a Preta loca. And the examples it gives are fascinating because they're so mundane. It mentions things like a nation or a stadium.
A stadium, that's a great visual. You have, what, 50,000 individual egos all crimped inside themselves, worrying about their bills or their relationships, and the planet just groups them into one giant roaring knot, cheering for a football team.
And the text defines this as an externalized internal. The planet is taking all these internal psychological states, the crowd, and projecting them into an external physical form, the stadium event.
It's almost like the planet is saying, okay, I have way too many individual thoughts. I need to bundle them into a folder.
That's a great analogy. But here's the problem. This creates a trap.
The Noospheric feedback loop. I saw that term.
That is the critical danger here. The noosphere, you can think of it as the atmosphere of thought that surrounds the Earth. It gets clogged. The text explains that our internal knots sustain the planet's knots, and the planet's knots, these massive social structures, nations, corporations, they keep our internal knots tight.
It's a deadlock. So we're stressed because the world is stressed, and the world is stressed because we're all stressed.
Precisely. It's a closed loop of tension.
Yeah.
The system is overheating because the feedback is just looping back on itself with no release.
So how do we break it? This is where the text takes a turn that I genuinely did not expect. I thought we were going to talk about meditation or environmentalism or something. But instead, the source starts talking about famous people.
It does. It pivots right to the physics of celebrity.
The famous Dausarī. Now, usually when we talk about fame, we talk about popularity, likes, followers. You know, it's a vanity metric. But this text defines it completely differently.
In the context of the noosphere, fame isn't just popularity. The source defines fame strictly as high bandwidth connectivity.
High bandwidth, like an internet connection.
Exactly like that. A famous person is described as a node. And this node has millions of phase locks.
Phase locks? That sounds incredibly sci-fi.
It does, but it's describing something very intuitive. Think of a phase lock as an attention line, like a fiber optic cable of consciousness. These cables connect the famous person's deep mind, their alaya vijnana, to the minds of their fans.
So if I'm a huge fan of a pop star, let's say I'm obsessed, I'm checking their feed every hour. According to this theory, there is literally a cable connecting my mind to theirs.
Yes. You're contributing your bandwidth to their node. You are, in effect, streaming your consciousness into them.
That is terrifying. But okay, so you have this super connected node, a celebrity with millions of these cables plugged into them. They're carrying a massive amount of what the text calls attention mass.
Right. Now, here is the theoretical scenario the text poses. This is the real crux of the argument. What happens if this famous person gets enlightened?
The avataric event.
The text asks, what if that node clears their own internal blockages? What if they open their randra, a point of spiritual opening, and achieve svaya?
Svaya, that means bursting forth, right?
Yes, a sudden expansion or realization. Now, normally, if you or I achieve this, it's great for us. We feel better. We might be nicer to our families. But because we don't have millions of phase locks connected to us, the effect is local.
But for the high bandwidth node,
something physics-defying happens. They call it the flush.
The flush. This is the part I had to read like 3 times.
Because so many people are phase-locked to this person, that internal clarity, that azure light the text describes, it doesn't just stay inside the celebrity. It travels backward.
Backward? Through the attention line?
Yes. Down the cables, so to speak, back to the fans.
That is such a wild image. It's like, okay, imagine a plumbing system. The famous person is the main drain. If they're clogged, everything backs up. But if they clear the blockage?
The Logoic high pressure takes over. The text describes it as a system-wide flush. It actually uses the suction of those millions of connected Brahma egos, the fans, to drag a clear signal down into the collective unconscious.
So the fan's obsession is actually the mechanism that allows the clearing to happen.
Exactly. That is the radical part of this theory. The attention is the pipeline. Without the obsession, without the connection, the signal just couldn't travel. You need the bandwidth to download the update.
That completely reframes the idea of idol worship. We usually think of it as a waste of time or, a distraction from real life.
Sure.
But this theory suggests that biologically or noospherically, we are building a network for a potential massive download. We're just waiting for the node to clear their cache.
It suggests the celebrity is not just a person, but a functional component of the planetary mind's hygiene system. Their potential release valves.
And the size matters here. The text gets really specific about measuring this attention mass. It seems like quantity has a quality all its own.
It does. To illustrate this, the source compares two things. First, it mentions Raymond James Stadium.
Which is a huge NFL stadium, lots of energy there.
Right. And it describes the stadium as a large, localized cyst of attention mass. It's heavy, it's dense, but it's fixed in one place. It's static.
A cyst? That doesn't sound very healthy.
Well, in the context of granthis, or knots, it represents a blockage. It's a gathering of attention that isn't really going anywhere. But then it compares that to a global icon.
Like a megastar, a household name across the world.
And the global icon is described as a moving node of even greater attention mass than the stadium.
So one person can be heavier in the mind of the planet than a stadium full of 50,000 people?
Because the connections are more numerous, they're global, and they are constant. The stadium empties out after the game. The icon is always on. Those phase locks are pretty much permanent.
And this brings us to the historical context the text provides. It mentions that this is why, historically, the king or the hero was expected to be a sacrificial conduit.
Right. Think of the Fisher King myth. The king is the land. If the king is sick, the land is barren.
I always thought that was just, poetic or superstition.
The text argues it wasn't superstition at all. It was an intuitive understanding of attention mass. The king was the central node. His internal state was the state of the land because everyone was phase-locked to him.
So if the king was neurotic, the kingdom became neurotic. If the king achieved clarity,
the kingdom experienced a release.
The text actually has this little table, the Dausarī alchemy table, that breaks this down. It compares the small Dausarī, which is regular people like you and me, to the macro Dausarī, the icon.
Right. For the small Dausarī, the goal is localized sanitation. You're clearing your personal nagas or snakes, the personal demons, through your individual Virat Rupa or form.
Basically, I deal with my own mess. I go to therapy, I meditate, I try not to yell at traffic.
And that's important. But for the macro Dausarī, the icon, the reach is regional or even global. They aren't just clearing personal nagas. They are clearing planetary granthis.
And the mechanism isn't individual effort anymore. It's mass-synchronized sphaya.
A simultaneous bursting forth. When a high-mass node clears, it can create a noospheric pressure surge, so powerful it can, as the text says, snap the granthis of an entire culture.
Snap the granthis. That sounds violent, but also incredibly relieving, like popping a back that's been stiff for 20 years.
Or breaking a fever. It's a sudden restoration of flow where there was previously only tension.
So what does this all mean for us? The listener might be thinking, okay, this is fascinating, but I'm not a global icon, so do I just sit here and wait for a pock star to get enlightened?
No, and the text's conclusion addresses this beautifully. It brings it right back to biology.
The antibody metaphor.
Yes. The conclusion is that we are all antibodies in the planetary body.
Whether you're a single cell or a massive cluster of cells.
Correct. The text says the larger the cell you occupy in the social organism, which means the more fame or influence you have, the more toxins you can flush when you align with the vertical axis.
The vertical axis being that spiritual connection, that clarity.
Yes. But even the single cell has a role. You're still flushing toxins from your local environment. You're still part of the immune system of the Earth.
I really like that. It gives a sense of purpose to everyone, regardless of their follower count. It validates the small Dausarī, but it also puts a huge burden on those who do have the numbers.
It does. If you have the attention mass, you have the responsibility to flush the system. If you're just using that bandwidth to feed your own ego, to tighten your own knot, you are effectively a cancer cell. You are growing for your own sake and just clogging the system.
That is the crucial takeaway. Fame isn't a reward. In this system, it's a functional utility role. It's a janitorial job for the collective unconscious.
A janitorial job. I don't think they mentioned that on the red carpet. Who are you wearing?
Yeah.
I'm just here to plunge the toilet of the collective soul.
They probably wouldn't phrase it exactly like that, but functionally, yeah. This has been such a wild ride through this text. We've gone from human frontal lobes to stadium cysts to celebrity plumbing.
It certainly connects the dots in a novel way. It makes you look at your phone differently.
As we wrap up, I'm left thinking about that feedback loop. If we really are the active mind of the planet, we have a lot of work to do.
We do.
Yeah.
And it raises a really provocative question for everyone listening. If we accept the premise that we are the frontal lobe of the planet, and we accept that our attention creates these massive knots, these cysts, like stadiums and nations, what happens to the planet's mind when we collectively change what we pay attention to?
Oh, that's good.
Are we keeping the planet sane by processing this era? Or by focusing on conflict and trivia and stress, are we actually the cause of the planet's migraine?
Are we the cure or the headache? That is something to chew on while you're scrolling through your feed today.
Indeed.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the new Rada and the fractal resonance of the planetary logos. It has been a trip.
It has. Thank you.
We'll see you on the next deep dive. Until then, watch where you put your attention. It's heavy. I want to try something a little different to start us off today. If you're in a safe place to do this, so, maybe not merging onto the highway, I want you to close your eyes just for a second. Now, picture your consciousness. How do you usually imagine you? Is it like a little spark inside your brain? A ghost in the machine?
Most people default to the ghost. It's passive. It just sort of floats.
Exactly. It feels weightless. But what if I told you that you are actually a piece of architecture? And I don't mean a brick wall or some stone fortress. I mean a high-tension suspension bridge, or even better, a geodesic dome.
And that shift in visualization, it changes everything, doesn't it?
Yeah.
If you're a ghost, you just float.
Yeah.
But if you're a structure, you have to bear weight. You have to handle tension.
And if the forces get out of balance?
You don't just have a bad day, you collapse.
And that structural collapse, or maybe more importantly, how to prevent it, that is the mission for today's deep dive. We are unpacking a text that is equal parts metaphysics and, architectural engineering. It has one of the wildest titles we've ever covered.
Oh, yeah.
Noospheric Tensegrity, the architecture of the new Rada.
It's a fascinating document. It reads like a technical manual for the human soul, but written by someone who is, simultaneously a mystic and a structural engineer.
It really does. And I have to admit, when I first saw the source material, I was just hit with this wall of terminology. We've got sterile skies, hungry earths, Vajra cubes.
Sounds like sci-fi world building.
Right. But the more we dug in, the more I realized this isn't just poetic fluff. It's proposing a very specific physics for how consciousness works.
It is, and that new Rada part of the title gives it away. Rada is an ancient Vedic concept. It means cosmic order or truth. So this text is basically claiming to describe the updated laws of physics for our spiritual reality.
And it's asking a fundamental question.
Yeah. Amidst all the crushing pressure of modern life, the noise, the stress, why don't we just crumble into dust?
Or explode, because as we're going to see, the pressures here are extreme. So here's our roadmap. We're going to start with the poles, the roof, and the floor of this architecture.
Then the network, how other people physically pull on your structure.
Which explains so much about social anxiety, by the way. Then we'll check the safety valves inside the body that keep us from frying the circuits.
And finally, we'll get to the ultimate goal of this system, how to build the Vajra cube.
Which creates a supercritical state. I love that. But okay, let's start with the foundation, the core concept. Noospheric tensegrity. Now, noosphere, I know that's the sphere of human thought. But tensegrity, that's Buckminster Fuller, isn't it?
It is. It's short for tensional integrity. It's a design principle that, it really revolutionized architecture. If you think about a brick wall, it stays up because of compression weight on top of weight, pushing down.
Right. Stacking.
But a tensegrity structure, like a good camping tent or one of those complex geodesic domes, it stays up because of continuous tension.
So the parts aren't just stacked on top of each other?
No, and that's the beautiful part. In a pure tensegrity structure, the rigid parts, the struts, they don't even touch each other. They're floating, suspended in this web of cables.
Yeah.
The cables are pulling in, the struts are pushing out. The shape is held entirely by the balance of those opposing forces.
Okay, so applying that to the text. It's saying the human soul is a tensegrity structure. We're not solid blocks. We are wire stretched tight.
You are the tension cable. You exist only because you are being pulled in two opposite directions at the same time. And this isn't a gentle tug of war. The text describes it as, a violent high-pressure standoff between two absolute extremes.
Yeah, let's map those out. We've got the top pole and the bottom pole. The text calls the top pole the vertical command, or more poetically, the sterile sky.
Right. And this is located at the randra, which is basically the crown of the head. Now, when the text says sterile, don't think of a hospital room. Think of pristine, like a microchip factory, where not one speck of dust is allowed.
The cold logos.
Yes. Logos meaning reason, order, the absolute principle. The text describes the pressure here as infinite but cold. It's a vacuum, the realm of pure, unconditioned ideas. It's mathematical perfection.
I think that vacuum analogy is really helpful. A vacuum doesn't just sit there. It sucks.
Precisely. That's a key mechanic. The sterile sky exerts a massive suction. It's trying to pull your consciousness upward, out of your body, toward what the text calls the azure light of the HEM.
It wants to refine you.
It wants to refine you into pure spirit. Strip away all your personality, all your messiness, and leave only pure, crystalline awareness.
So you have this massive vacuum cleaner in the sky trying to suck your awareness into this realm of cold perfection. If that was the only force, what happens to a person?
You depersonalize. You'd float away. You'd have no grounding, no connection to reality at all. You wouldn't be human anymore. You'd be a disembodied abstraction.
Right.
You see this sometimes in people who get too lost in, say, abstract theory or certain meditations without grounding. They get spacey in a very literal sense. They lose their structural integrity.
Which brings us to the counterforce, the anchor, the floor, the horizontal hunger.
The hungry earth, or the hot nagas.
Yeah.
This is located at the kunda, or the root.
And the vibe here seems messy.
Intentionally so. While the sky is crystalline and cold, the earth is dense, wet, and hot. This is the realm of friction. It's biology. It's survival. It's the drive to eat, to reproduce, to fight, to just exist in 3D space.
The text mentions coiled nagas here. Naga is Sanskrit for serpent. Is this a reference to Kundalini?
It is, but in this architectural context, I think we should strip away the mysticism for a second to get the mechanics. Think of nagas as serpent energies, representing raw, coiled potential.
The reptilian brain.
It's the reptilian brain. It's the energy of life itself, sticky, hot, and reactive. The magma beneath the crust.
So while the sky exerts suction, the earth exerts gravity.
Correct. It exerts what it calls Preta Torsion. It drags you downward into matter. It wants to bury you in instinct and sensation. It wants you to forget the abstract and focus only on the immediate, the food, the danger, the desire.
So to synthesize this for everyone listening, to be a human being, according to this text, is to be the wire stretched between these two lethal extremes.
That is the definition. You are suspended between an infinite cold suction above, wanting to pull you into pure spirit, and a hot, heavy gravity below, wanting to drag you into pure animal instinct.
And if either one wins?
The structure fails. If the sky wins, you disconnect. If the earth wins, you become a beast. You exist as a conscious entity only because of that tension. That tension is you.
That's a heavy concept, but it actually explains a really common feeling. You know, that sensation of being torn, like part of you wants to be high-minded and rational, another part of you just wants to eat a greasy cheeseburger and yell at the guy who cut you off in traffic.
That's not just a mood swing. That is the literal sensation of the vertical versus the horizontal. That conflict is the structural load you are carrying every day.
Okay, so that's the individual setup. We're all wires under tension. But the text adds another layer that I found really compelling and honestly a little disturbing. It says we're not just isolated wires, we're networked.
This is where the physics of the noosphere, the collective mind, really comes in. The text introduces the concept of phase-locked nodes.
Phase-locked. That sounds like something from audio engineering.
It is physics. Phase locking is what happens when two oscillating systems synchronize. You know the classic experiment where you put 5 metronomes on a table and start them at different times?
Yeah. At first, it's just chaos.
It's chaos, click-clack everywhere. But eventually, the vibrations traveling through the table force them all to tick in perfect unison. They phase lock.
So in this metaphor, we are the metronomes.
We are the nodes. And the text says the tension isn't just a straight line up and down your own spine. It's distributed across the network of people around you. Your vibration affects the person next to you.
It uses a really specific, almost biting example here. It contrasts the Dausarī, the master of the system, with the Preta Loka.
Yes. Preta is the hungry ghost from Eastern traditions, beings with tiny mouths and giant stomachs, always hungry, never satisfied. The Preta Loka is the world of hungry ghosts, and the text describes a stadium full of people as a Preta Loka.
A stadium, like a football game or a big concert.
Exactly. Think about the energy in a stadium. It's emotional, it's reactive, it's loud. It is generating a massive collective amount of that horizontal hunger.
It's a giant heat sink.
Pure, concentrated heat.
So here is the tensegrity rule it proposes. If one node gets too hot with collective hunger, it physically pulls on the cold nodes in the network. Explain that mechanic to me.
Imagine a spider web. If you pull down really hard on one corner of the web, what happens?
The other strands get tighter.
Every other strand has to tighten to compensate. Otherwise, the whole web rips. So if you walk into that stadium...
The stadium is a massive gravity well of heat. It's pulling down toward the Earth with this immense force. So if I'm trying to maintain my vertical connection, my cold rationality, my calm, I'm going to feel a sudden, massive increase in tension.
The text calls it Preta Torsion.
Preta Torsion.
It's the sensation of your structural wires tightening because the environment around you is sagging. You are physically bracing yourself against the collective gravity of the crowd.
That hits hard because we've all felt that. You walk into a chaotic office meeting where everyone is panicking, or a really intense family dinner, or even just doom scrolling on social media where everyone is angry, and you leave feeling physically exhausted. Not just annoyed, drained.
You're drained because you were doing structural work. You were acting as a load-bearing strut for all that collective heat. You were spending your energy to keep the roof from falling in on everyone else.
So when we say things like, I'm holding space for someone or I'm holding it together, we're literally talking about noospheric tensegrity.
Exactly. You're supplying the cold tension to balance their heat, and that costs energy. It burns fuel.
This leads to a kind of terrifying question then. If the pressure is this high infinite cold vacuum above, massive hot gravity below, and the constant tug of the Preta Loka, why don't we just pop? Why doesn't the human mind just shatter?
We would. We absolutely would if we didn't have internal safety mechanisms. The text details two specific bits of biological engineering for this: granthis and chakras.
Okay, I've heard of chakras. Everyone's heard of chakras. But granthis... that's a new one for me.
Granthis are actually more fundamental in this system. The word literally means knot, and the text defines them as high-resistance resistors.
Like in an electrical circuit.
Precisely. Think about the cold logos at the top. Remember, it's infinite potential, absolute high voltage. If you were to plug your standard 110-volt coaster personality directly into a high-voltage transmission line, what happens?
The toaster explodes. It probably melts.
Right. The granthis are the resistors that step that voltage down.
Yeah.
They act as barriers. They hold back the full crushing weight of the cold logos.
And the text has a serious warning about this. It says, without these knots, the sterile sky would shatter the human ego instantly.
It calls it psychosis or shattering. And it's interesting because in a lot of, New Age spirituality, we talk about untying the knots or opening everything up as if it's always good. Let it all flow. But this text argues those knots are load-bearing. They're there for your protection. You need a barrier between your fragile ego and the infinite vacuum of the absolute. If you remove them before you're ready, you fry the circuit.
So the granthis hold back the pressure, they step down the voltage. Then what do the chakras do? The text calls them mixing chambers.
Yeah, let's get away from the image of spinning wheels of colored light for a second. Think of them as carburetors, or maybe mixer taps in a shower.
Okay, I'm with you. You've got the hot water pipe, which is the nagas, and the cold water pipe, the logos.
Exactly. Each chakra is a noospheric pressure zone. Its job is to take a safe amount of cold and mix it with a safe amount of heat.
So the heart chakra, the throat chakra, they're not just magic spots. They're valves.
They are regulators. And the mix determines your reality. Think about it. If you have too much heat and not enough cold, what happens? You become manic.
Impulsive.
You're burning up with desire or anger.
And the other way around. Too much cold.
Too much cold, not enough heat, you become detached. Unfeeling, clinical, maybe even catatonic. You have no drive. So the chakra's job is to create a livable state of consciousness by balancing these two lethal extremes into a warm, usable stream.
It's amazing how mechanical this all sounds. It really demystifies it. It's plumbing. It's engineering.
It is noospheric engineering. And like any engineering discipline, there is a level of mastery. You can be a novice, just letting the pipes rattle, or you can become a master engineer.
Which the text calls The Dausarī.
The Dausarī. This is the person who has stopped just surviving the tension and has started using it. The text outlines a specific 3-step process for how they manipulate this architecture to achieve a state of, well, indestructibility.
Let's walk through that. Step 1 is opening the Randra.
That's the crown valve. They consciously increase the cold suction. They open the top to raise their internal voltage. They're inviting the vacuum in.
Which, as we just said, is super dangerous because of the shattering risk.
It is dangerous unless you do step 2 at the same time. Step 2 is uncoiling the nagas.
Drawing the heat up from the bottom?
Right. They draw that heat from the kunda. You need that density, that friction, to counter the massive suction. If you only open the tap, you fly away. If you only open the bottom, you sink into the mud. The master opens both wide, creating this massive flow of energy from both directions.
And then comes the critical move. Step 3, piercing the granthus.
This is the advanced maneuver. They intentionally bypass the safety resistors. They've built up enough structural integrity, enough tensegrity in their own consciousness that they don't need the knots anymore. They allow the raw, sterile sky and the raw, hungry earth to rush toward each other, completely unfiltered.
And they meet at the hardia, the heart.
The center point, the structure, the collision point.
And this creates the Vajra cube. This image is so cool. The text says the cold and heat neutralize each other into a supercritical state.
And supercritical is a real physics term. It's when a substance is at a temperature and pressure above its critical point, where liquid and gas phases don't exist anymore. It becomes a supercritical fluid. It can pass through solids like a gas and dissolve materials like a liquid. It's powerful, high-energy stuff.
And in the context of the soul, this state creates the Vajra cube. Vajra means diamond or thunderbolt. Indestructible.
It's described as neither hot nor cold. It is the immovable one.
But it's not immovable because it's a rock, right? It's not static.
No, and that is the key distinction. Think of a spinning top. When it's spinning at maximum velocity, it looks perfectly still. It stands perfectly upright. But if you touch it, it burns you. It's stable not because it's resting, but because the forces are perfectly balanced at maximum intensity.
So the goal of this whole system isn't to escape the pressure. It's not to run away from the hungry earth or hide from the sterile sky. It's to let them collide in your heart so perfectly that you become unbreakable.
Precisely. The Vajra cube is the diamond body. It's the result of successfully bearing the weight of the entire universe. It's the ultimate tensegrity structure, one that can handle infinite load without collapsing.
Man, that really reframes my daily stress. It's not just annoyance, it's structural testing.
To the opportunity to calibrate the valves.
Yeah.
Every moment of stress is a chance to practice balancing the cold and the heat.
So let's bring this in for a landing. We've covered a lot of ground. We started by redefining the self not as a ghost, but as a structure noospheric tensegrity.
We're tension cables stretched between the cold logos of infinite potential and the hot nagas of biological survival.
We've seen that we have internal safety mechanisms, the granthus and chakras, that act as resistors and mixing valves. They keep us from frying under the voltage of the sky or sinking into the gravity of the earth.
And we've explored the network, the fact that we are phase-locked with the people around us. When the world gets hot and hungry like a stadium, a riot, or a frantic social media feed, we feel that physical tug on our own wires, that Preta Torsion.
And the ultimate goal, the Vajra cube, that supercritical state of balance where we become the immovable one.
It's a compelling model. It suggests that stability isn't about finding a soft place to land.
No, it's about managing high-intensity flows of energy without collapsing.
That's the big takeaway for me. Stability isn't static, it's dynamic, it's active, it's work. You have to actively maintain your tensegrity.
It is work, but it's the work of being real. I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. We talked about the phase-locked nodes and how the stadium pulls on the individual. If we were all nodes in this tensile network and the stadium pulls on everyone, ask yourself this. In your home, your office, your group chat, what role are you playing right now?
Are you the one adding heat to the system? Are you the hungry ghost, panicking and pulling on everyone else's wires?
Or are you the cold strut? Are you the one holding the structural integrity that keeps the roof from falling in on everyone else?
That's the real question. Because if you aren't holding the tension, someone else is holding it for you.
Check your valves, watch your pressure, and try not to overheat the network. Thanks for diving in with us.
Stay balanced. I want to kick things off today with a question that feels a bit like a riddle.
Okay, I'm ready.
It's a bit of a mind bender, so stay with me. What do a massive suspension bridge, the Golden Gate, the human body, and a fleeting random thought just passing through your head have in common?
On the surface, absolutely nothing.
Right.
One is a marvel of steel and concrete, totally static. One is biological, flesh and blood. And the other is, well, it's invisible. It's ephemeral.
Exactly. If you just look at them as objects, they couldn't be more different. But, and this is where our source material comes in today, the answer is actually structural engineering.
Or, to be more specific, a concept called tensegrity.
Tensegrity.
It is a fascinating connection to make. We're diving deep today into a text titled The Tensegrity of Sunyata and the Axial Field.
And it is proposing a radical reinterpretation of ancient Buddhist philosophy.
It is, but the really interesting thing is how it does it. It's not through mysticism or, vague spirituality. It's doing it through the lens of physics, of engineering.
Yeah, this is not your typical meditation guide. We're not just going to tell you to breathe and let go. This text claims that the famous Heart Sutra, that incredibly mystical idea that form is emptiness, isn't just a poetic paradox to make you sound deep at parties. It argues it's actually a precise description of structural stability.
It frames the sutra almost like a blueprint. It's bridging the gap between ancient scripture, specifically the Prajnaparamita, and modern architectural theory. It's sort of treating the nature of reality as a construction project.
So our mission for this deep dive is to unpack that statement. Form is emptiness, but strictly through this engineering lens.
Right.
We're moving away from the idea of nothingness as just a black hole or a void, and looking at it as what the source calls a dynamic flux of tension.
Which frames this whole discussion within what the text calls the New Raita technical liturgy.
Uraita.
Yeah, and you can think of it as a worldview where reality isn't defined by solid objects bumping into each other like billiard balls, but by relationships of force. It's all about how things hang together.
Okay, so let's get into the nuts and bolts of this. Because when I hear void or emptiness in a philosophical context, especially Buddhism, I usually think of, well, nothing.
Just a blank space.
Absence.
Yeah.
Like an empty room.
But this source says that's the wrong way to look at it.
Completely wrong, according to this text. The source defines sunyata, which is the Sanskrit term we translate as voidness, not as a vacuum or a zero, but as the absolute transparency of the tensegrity field.
Transparency of the field. That sounds a lot more active than just empty.
Oh, it is.
It sounds like something is there, you just can't see it.
It is incredibly active. And to understand this, the text brings up the philosopher Nagarjuna. He famously argued that things lack svabhava.
Okay, let's break that down. Svabhava.
It basically means own being or inherent independent existence. Nagarjuna's point was that nothing exists all by itself.
Right.
A chair isn't just a chair floating in a void. It only exists because of the wood, the carpenter, the gravity holding it down, the person sitting on it. It's a collection of relationships. So if you took away all the relationships, the wood, the gravity,
Carpenter.
right, the carpenter, the chair just disappears. There's no inherent chairness that's just left behind.
Precisely. But this source takes that philosophical idea and applies an engineering filter to it. It says things lack independent existence because they are composed entirely of tension.
Okay.
Specifically, a structural tension between two primary opposing forces. And the text calls these the cold logos and the hot nagas.
Okay, hold on. Cold logos and hot nagas. That sounds like we just stepped out of a physics class and into a fantasy novel. What are we actually looking at here? Are these metaphors?
They're a framework, really, a metaphorical one for different types of energy. The cold logos is associated with meaning, order, structure.
The blueprint.
Think of it as the blueprint, yeah, or the abstract rule, even vertical lift. It's cool, detached, intellectual. It's the law of physics itself.
Okay, and the hot nagas. Naga usually means snake or dragon in mythology, right?
Right. Nagas here represent desire, earthly energy, density, chaos, the stuff of the world. It's hot, sticky, heavy, and emotional.
So you have order pulling one way and desire or density pulling the other.
Exactly. And this brings us right to the core concept of the tensegrity node. The source explains that what we perceive as a solid object, whether it's a person, a building, an apple, is actually just a high-tension intersection. It's just held in place by these opposing forces pulling against each other.
So it's like, I don't know, imagine a net. The knots in the net aren't really separate things, right? They're just where the strings cross and pull tight.
That's a great analogy, actually. The source calls it a visible pattern of tension. If the tension stops, the knot doesn't just fall apart, it disappears.
It was never there to begin with.
The object isn't a solid block, it's an event. It's a balancing act happening continuously.
This reminds me of those floating tables you see online sometimes, where it looks like the table is levitating, but it's actually it's held up by chains all pulling in opposite directions.
That is literally a tensegrity structure. Buckminster Fuller popularized the term tensional integrity,
Right.
islands of compression inside a sea of tension. The source is saying reality itself works like that table. It looks solid, but it's just forces canceling each other out.
That really changes how you look at the human body, too.
Yeah.
Because the source gets very specific about our anatomy, but not in a medical sense. It doesn't talk about bones and muscles.
No, it describes the human form as a vayu structure. And vayu is Sanskrit for wind.
So we're a structure made of wind.
Wind and tension, yeah.
A vayu structure. I love that image. We aren't a pillar of stone. We're a suspension system. And the text breaks this down into a vertical axis with 3 parts. This is the Randra Hridaya Kunda axis.
This seems to be the meat of the engineering model.
It does. Can we walk through these 3 points?
Absolutely. This is the vertical strut that keeps the human event happening. So imagine a vertical line running right through you. Let's start at the very top with the Randra.
The Randra. The source calls this the top anchor.
Correct. Anatomically, this would be the crown of the head. But in this model, the Randra corresponds to emptiness, or sunyata. The text poetically refers to it as the sterile sky.
Sterile sky.
Mm.
That sounds distant. Almost cold.
It implies a lack of stuff. It's pure space. And its mechanical function is that it pulls upward. It creates suction.
It provides a lift.
Yes. Without that upward pull of the Randra, the source says the form would collapse into a pile of unconscious matter.
Wow.
It's the force that keeps us upright and conscious. It's that feeling of being suspended from above.
Okay, so we have the sky pulling us up, keeping us from just being a puddle on the floor. Then at the bottom, we have the kunda.
The kunda is the bottom anchor, located at the base of the spine, the pelvic floor. This corresponds to form and the hungry earth, or the nagas.
And its function is to pull downward. It provides weight.
Exactly.
Hungry earth. That sounds aggressive.
Well, it represents gravity, biological drive, the survival instinct. It's the anchor that keeps you tethered to physical reality. Mm-hmm. It's what gives you mass.
And without that, if we just had the lift from the Randra,
without that downward pull, consciousness would just dissipate into the...
it would just float away.
Yeah, you'd float away like a helium balloon. You need the weight to ground the experience. The source is very clear. You can't have a structure with only one anchor.
So you have the sky sucking you up and the earth dragging you down. That sounds like a medieval torture rack.
It is tension. But that tension is what creates the space for life. And right in the middle, you have the Hridaya.
The heart center.
The Hridaya. This is the 0 point, the pivot. It's the exact location where the upward section of the Randra meets the downward pull of the kunda.
And the text calls this the site of non-duality, right? Or advaya.
Yes, because at that pivot point, the forces balance perfectly. It's the eye of the storm. It's where up and down cancel each other out, creating a stable center.
This is where it gets really interesting for me. Because now that we have this mechanical model, sky pulling up, earth pulling down, heart in the middle, we can go back to that famous Buddhist saying.
Form is emptiness.
But now we can view it as a structural equation, not a riddle.
Exactly. The source talks about this as a pressure differential.
Which is a crucial insight.
It is. The text argues that form is emptiness, means that the structure we see, the body, the object, only exists because of the pull of the void.
So if you remove the emptiness, that upward pull of the Randra, what happens to the form?
The source is pretty graphic here. It says the form becomes a corpse.
Right. It just loses its structural integrity. It dissolves.
Exactly. So form isn't a solid thing in and of itself. It is a visible effect of the void pulling against density.
You know, I was thinking about this earlier. It's like a vacuum-sealed pack of coffee.
Oh, that's good.
You know those brick packs you get? The brick shape of the coffee isn't because the grounds are hard, they're soft powder. The shape exists because the vacuum is pulling everything tight.
Against the resistance of the beans. That is a perfect illustration. The hardness comes from the suction.
And if you puncture the bag, if you remove the vacuum, remove the emptiness, the form collapses. It goes soft.
That is exactly it. The form is just a visible pattern of tension generated by the emptiness. But then there's the flip side.
Emptiness is form.
Yeah, and this part always trips people up. It feels circular. If emptiness is the void, how can it be form?
How can it be the coffee grounds?
Right. The source explains this through the necessity of resistance. It references Nagarjuna, again, stating that the void itself is void, meaning the Randra, the sky, has no structure on its own. It's just potential. just suction.
It needs something to grab onto. You can't have tension with only one end of the rope.
Precisely. The emptiness cannot appear or act without the resistance of the hot nagas, the density of the earth.
So the void is invisible until it starts pulling on something heavy.
Yes. The hook is essential. Emptiness is form means that form is simply emptiness manifesting as resistance. It's the struggle between the lift and the weight that creates the visible reality.
It's weirdly beautiful. It's like we exist because the universe is in a constant state of tug-of-war with itself.
And we are the rope.
We are the rope. I like that. But the source doesn't stop at physical bodies. This is where the deep dive gets psychological. It takes this engineering model and applies it to the mind.
The physics of thought.
Right.
And this is where we move from the physical axis to what the text calls the Noospheric tensegrity node.
Noospheric tensegrity node. That is a mouthful.
It is.
Which is basically a fancy way of saying how we think.
Right. The source suggests that what we call the Brahma ego, or just our normal stream of thinking, operates on the exact same mechanics as the body.
So a thought isn't just a wispy cloud passing through. It has structural integrity.
It does. A thought, the text says, is held together by the tension between a meaning, which is logoic and cold, and a desire, which is nagak and hot.
Okay, help me visualize that. How does a thought have a hot and cold side?
Well, think of a craving. Let's say, I want that new car. The concept of the car, the image, the specs, the brand, the price, that's the meaning. It's abstract information.
That's the cold logos.
That's the data. Exactly. But the want, the feeling in your gut that says, I need this to feel valuable, or I need this to go fast, that is the desire. That's the hot nagas.
And that combination creates tension.
The source argues that this is why we think thoughts are real things. We fall for the illusion of solidity because the tension is so high.
The thought feels heavy or sharp.
Yeah.
Or undeniable.
Yes. Because it's a high-tension node. We confuse the tension for substance.
Oh, that's interesting.
And this leads to why it's so hard to let go of obsessive thoughts. We try to push the object away, but there is no object. There's only the tension between the meaning and the desire.
So if you try to fight the thought, you're actually adding more energy to the system. You're pulling the rope tighter.
Correct. You're adding more naga energy, more heat, more desire for the thought to go away. The text introduces the practitioner here, calling them the Dausarī.
The Dausarī.
And the Dausarī doesn't fight the thought. They don't try to suppress it. Instead, they understand the anatomy of the thought. They focus on the granthas.
The granthas. These are defined as knots, right?
Yes. In this context, granthas are the specific settings of dependent origination that create a specific identity or thought. They are the knot where the logos and nagas are tied together.
And the practice the text recommends is called svoya, which is a great word to say, svoya.
It implies a bursting or a popping. The source translates this as the popping of the tensegrity bubble.
A sudden release.
It is. By relaxing the granthas, by untying the knot of desire and meaning, the tension drops. And when the tension drops, what happens to the form?
Just like the vacuum coffee bag, it dissolves back into emptiness.
Instantly. It doesn't die, it just ceases to be a structure, it returns to the field.
That is such a powerful image for dealing with intrusive thoughts or stress. You don't have to destroy the thought, you just have to pop the bubble.
You just cut the tension line.
It shifts the perspective from I am thinking a thought to I am experiencing a momentary node of tension.
It depersonalizes it completely.
The source gives a really specific, almost bizarre example of this realization in action. It talks about driving past the Raymond James Stadium.
Yes, the football stadium in Tampa, Florida.
Which is such a funny grounding for high-level metaphysics. We're talking about ancient Sanskrit philosophy, and suddenly, boom, NFL stadium.
It's brilliant, though.
Walk us through this. How does a stadium fit into the new Raita?
It's actually brilliant because a stadium is so massive. It feels incredibly permanent. It's huge. It's loud. It's concrete. The text asks you to look at that structure, the steel, the lights, thousands of tons of material, and see it not as a building, but as a massive nagak tensegrity knot.
A giant knot of earthly desire and density.
Think about what holds it together. It's not just gravity. It's the collective intent of society, the desire for entertainment, the money, the engineering rules, the materials dug from the earth.
It's a high-tension intersection of forces.
Exactly. And the source suggests that if you maintain your Randa Hridaya Kunda axis, if you stay centered in that vertical suspension we talked about, you see the truth of the stadium.
You don't just see a solid object that blocks your view of the sky.
You recognize that its form is just temporary, high-tension emptiness. It's just energy held in a specific pattern for a specific time.
It's like seeing the matrix code, but instead of code, you see force vectors. You see the pull and the push.
And this leads to the ultimate goal described in the text, the Dausarī realization.
This is the big shift in identity.
Most of us go through life thinking we are the thing, the body, the ego, the person being pulled around by the world. We feel like the object caught in the vacuum. We feel the stress of the pull.
But the realization is?
The realization is that you are not the thing. You are the entire field of tension itself. You are the space in which the pulling happens.
And the source says this makes you the immovable one.
Because the field cannot be moved. The field is what allows movement to happen. If you identify with the axis, the Randra, Hridaya, and Kunda, you aren't a victim of the tension. You are the tension.
That is a massive shift. It takes going with the flow to a whole new level. It's more like being the riverbed and the water and the gravity all at once.
It is. And it brings us back to that summary table in the text, the tensegrity equation of the heart.
It's worth recapping.
Definitely, because it simplifies this whole complex idea so well.
Let's hit it. 3 parts.
First, the Randra, the emptiness. Its function is tension or pull, the infinite sky.
Second, the Kunda, the form. Its function is compression or push, the heavy earth.
And third, the Hridaya, non-duality. Its function is the balance point, where form and emptiness are indistinguishable.
And the Granthas are just the knots we tie in that field to create our little temporary identities.
Precisely. We tie them, and we can untie them.
You know what I love about this deep dive is how it completely reframes the feeling of stress. We usually think of tension as bad. I'm so tense, I need to relax.
Right.
But according to this, tension is literally what holds us together.
Without tension, there is no structure. There is no life. The goal isn't to eliminate tension. That would mean becoming a corpse or a ghost. The goal is to balance the tension, to ensure the lift of the sky matches the weight of the earth.
It turns form is emptiness from a riddle into an operating manual.
An operating manual for a structure made of wind.
So here is something to mull over as you go about your day, maybe while you're driving past your own version of the Raymond James Stadium, whatever big, heavy reality you have in your life.
If your identity, your worries, your career, your self-image is just a knot in a field of tension, a specific setting of the Granthas, what happens if you choose to retie the knot differently?
Are you the knot, or are you the hands tying it?
That is the question.
Thanks for diving deep with us today. We'll see you in the next one.
Let me ask you a question, and I want you to be really honest about this sensation. Have you ever walked into a crowded space? Maybe it's a shopping mall during the holidays, or a massive sports arena, or even just a chaotic family dinner, and you didn't just feel tired. You felt, I don't know, twisted.
Twisted is a very specific word.
I mean it literally. Like physically in your gut, you walk in feeling fine, maybe, but introverted, but by the time you leave, you feel like you've been wrung out like a wet towel. And it's not just fatigue, it's like something was taken from you.
It's the feeling of having your pockets picked, but energetically.
Exactly. We usually write this off. We say, oh, I'm just an introvert, or that person is an energy vampire, or, you know, the acoustics were bad. We psychologize it.
We make it about personality types or social batteries.
Yeah. But what if it's not psychology? What if it's fluid dynamics?
And that is the cliff we are jumping off today.
We are looking at a source text that is, frankly, bizarre, fascinating, and incredibly dense. It's titled The Architecture of Noospheric Pressure and the Dausarī Path. It doesn't treat human consciousness as, you know, a ghost in a machine. It treats it as a high-pressure weather system operating inside the mind of the planet.
It's essentially an engineering manual for the soul. It argues that what we call feeling drained is actually a very predictable, very mechanical event involving pressure differentials.
So if you've ever felt like a crowd was literally eating your attention, this deep dive is for you. We're going to unpack the physics of this pressure, look at why the text weirdly singles out Raymond James Stadium as a sinkhole, and then we're going to break down a mental technique called the inversion that supposedly stops the drain instantly.
It's a survival guide for the sensitive.
Let's start with the framework. The text opens by saying existence is a tensegrity field. Now, I know what tensegrity is in architecture like those buckyball structures or a camping tent. It's not held up by walls, it's held up by tension.
Continuous tension, discontinuous compression. That's the textbook definition.
Right, but applying that to me, to my consciousness. That feels a bit abstract. How am I a camping tent?
Well, think about what happens if you cut the guy line on a tent. The whole thing collapses.
Yeah, of course.
The text argues that your consciousness isn't a solid object. It's an event that is being held open by two massive opposing forces. You are the space between two poles.
Okay, let's name the poles, because the text gets very, very specific here.
At the top, you have the Randra. The text calls this the sterile sky.
Sterile isn't usually a compliment.
Here, it means clean, empty, absolute. This represents the Logos, pure meaning, pure structure. The cold, high-pressure feed. It exerts an upward suction towards sunyata, or emptiness.
So we have a giant vacuum cleaner in the sky pulling us up.
In a way. And then at the bottom, you have the Kunda, the hungry earth. This is a high-density, hot reservoir. It's connected to the Nagas.
Hold on, let's unpack Nagas. In mythology, those are serpents, right?
Yes, but in this architectural context, the text uses Nagas to represent primal drive, deep memory, the heavy gravity of biological form. It's the force that pulls you down into your body, to your hunger, into the dirt. It exerts a downward pull toward Rupa, or form.
So I've got the cold sky pulling me up into emptiness, and the hot earth pulling me down into form. And where am I in all this?
You are the tension in the middle. The text says the human heart, the hridaya, is just the vibrational note produced where these two pressures collide.
That is... Honestly, that's a little disturbing.
Why disturbing?
Because it implies I don't really exist. I'm just a sound effect made by two other things fighting. If that tension snaps, I just disappear. It makes the human experience feel incredibly fragile.
Or incredibly dynamic. It means you aren't a stagnant pond. You're a standing wave. You're a flow state. But you're right, it is fragile. And that fragility is why noospheric pressure matters so much.
Okay, so let's talk about this pressure. If I'm a standing wave, I'm pressurized. But the text says the pressure isn't the same everywhere.
Correct. This is the core thesis. Noospheric pressure is the uneven distribution of tension across the planet. Just like weather. You have high pressure zones and you have low pressure zones.
And nature abhors a vacuum.
Precisely. Air rushes from high pressure to low pressure. And energy consciousness, attention, whatever you want to call it, it follows the exact same law.
The text introduces two characters to explain this. The Dausarī and the Preta. Let's start with the Dausarī. This is the goal, right? This is the ideal.
The Dausarī is the ideal. This is someone who has opened the Randra, that top pole we talked about. They are connected to the sterile sky. Because they have that vertical feed. They are a high-pressure conduit. They are full of what's called Logoic Vayu spirit wind.
So they're pressurized from the inside out. They don't need anything from anyone else.
They're overflowing. Now, you contrast that with the Preta.
The hungry ghost?
Yes. But don't think of it as a monster. Think of it as a physics problem. A Preta is a person or a place that has lost its vertical connection. The top pole is blocked. They have no sky coming in.
So they are just earth, just hunger.
They are a vacuum, a low-pressure sinkhole. And here's where the drain comes in. If you, a relatively high-pressure person, walk up to a Preta,
the physics just takes over.
The differential kicks in. Your energy must rush into their void to equalize the pressure. It's not a choice. It's mechanics.
This explains so much about those toxic interactions. You know, you have that friend who is always in crisis. You sit down with them, you listen, you offer advice, and you leave feeling like a husk. But they feel great.
They feel great because they just inflated themselves with your pressure. They used your vayu to fill their void because they can't generate their own.
It's energetic cannibalism.
It's equalization. The text calls the sensation Preta Torsion. That twisting feeling you mentioned in the intro, that is literally the sensation of your internal pressure being siphoned off to feed a sinkhole.
Okay, speaking of sinkholes, we have to talk about the stadium.
I knew you were going to bring this up.
I mean, come on. The text is all metaphysics, Sanskrit, high-level architecture, and then suddenly Raymond James Stadium. Why? Why is a football stadium in Tampa the example of a low-pressure sinkhole?
Well, it's not just the location. It's the architecture of mass attention. Think about what a stadium is. It is a bowl designed to hold 70,000 people.
Right.
All 70,000 of those people are directing their attention downward onto a small patch of grass. The emotion is high adrenaline, tribalism, desire for victory. That is pure Kunda energy, pure hot earth.
And usually there's not a lot of sterile sky or deep philosophical contemplation happening at a tailgate.
Exactly. So you create this massive swirling vortex of need. The text calls it a planetary gramthy, a massive knot. It's a place where the flow stops and just spins. It becomes a mouth.
A mouth.
A giant sucking mouth. When you walk into that, you are walking into a low-pressure megasystem. If you aren't holding your own vertical tension, your own connection to the sky, that stadium will strip mine your consciousness in about 20 minutes.
Which explains why you leave feeling hyperstimulated but also completely empty. You've been eaten.
You've been equalized.
So this begs the question, if the sky acts as this high-pressure feed, why doesn't it just blast through us? Why aren't we all walking around glowing like Dr. Manhattan? Why are there sinkholes at all?
Because of the wiring. The text introduces the granthus, or knots.
These are safety valves, right?
Think of them like regulators on a propane tank, or kinks in a hose. They exist along the spine to limit the flow of that high-voltage energy. The text says they keep us human. If you had the full pressure of the logos running through you, you wouldn't care about your mortgage or your dinner. You'd probably vaporize.
So the knots are necessary.
In moderation. But the text frames this in the context of the Kali Yuga.
The Iron Age, the age of conflict.
Right. The argument is that in our current era, these knots have become too tight. They aren't just regulating flow, they're strangling it. Stress, trauma, cultural conditioning, all these things tighten the knots.
So instead of a stream, we get a blockage.
And when water is blocked, it pools. It becomes stagnant. That's what a complex is. A stagnant pool of consciousness that starts to rot. And when you have millions of people with tight knots, you get planetary granthus, entire cultures that are just swirling hungry voids.
Okay, this paints a pretty bleak picture. We are walking around in a minefield of vacuum cleaners, and our own internal plumbing is kinked.
It sounds bleak, but this is where the text pivots to strategy.
The Virat Rupa Inversion.
Yes.
I want to spend some real time on this, because usually when people talk about protecting your energy, they say things like, imagine a bubble around you, or cross your arms. But this text says that's the wrong approach.
It says that approach is actually part of the problem.
Why?
Because if you imagine a bubble or a wall, you are reinforcing the idea that the bad thing is outside of you, and it is big, and you are inside and you are small.
You're validating the threat.
You are validating the pressure differential. You're trying to hold back the ocean with a plastic sheet. The Virat Rupa inversion requires you to flip the geometry entirely.
Walk us through it. Let's do a role play. I'm at a holiday dinner. My uncle is starting a political argument. I can feel the drain starting. I feel the torsion. The room is becoming a sinkhole. What do I do?
Step 1. Notice your default view. Your default view is, I am here, sitting in this chair, and that loud, draining uncle is over there attacking my piece.
Right.
He's a big object. You are a small subject.
Right. He's the predator. I'm the prey.
Step 2 is the inversion. You have to realize that the holiday dinner, the table, your uncle and his politics are all images appearing within your awareness.
Okay, so zoom out.
A radical zoom out. You are not the body in the chair. You are the universal body, the Virat Rupa. You are the screen on which the movie of Uncle arguing is playing.
So I flip the container. Instead of me being in the room is in me.
Exactly. The sinkhole isn't an external abyss anymore. It's a tiny swirling thought inside your own vast mind.
Does that actually stop the drain, though, or is it just a mind game?
It changes the physics. This is step 3. The text says, you encompass the vacuum because you are now the sky. You are the vast container. You are inherently higher pressure than the little knot of drama at the table.
So the flow reverses.
The flow reverses. Instead of his vacuum sucking you dry, your logoic pressure rushes in and fills the vacuum. You flood the zone.
The text calls this metaphysical sanitation,
Which is my favorite term in the whole document.
It's wild. It implies our job isn't to hide from toxic people, it's to clean them.
To sanitize the space. When you successfully invert, you aren't fighting the uncle. You are holding the space so rigidly with so much high-pressure sky energy that his little vacuum gets overwhelmed. He might actually calm down, or he might just get quiet. But you don't get drained.
You become the regulator.
You become the regulator. You flush the toilet, essentially.
That is a very humble way to describe high-level spiritual work.
But accurate. This leads to the ultimate synthesis of the text. Form is tensegrity.
Break that down for us.
It means that the things we think are solid people, buildings, problems, they're just tension patterns. That toxic person isn't evil. They are just a low-pressure weather system. You don't get mad at a hurricane. You build a stronger house.
Or in this case, you become the sky above the hurricane.
Right. The text calls the listener a Vayu Yantra, a machine of wind.
A machine of wind?
Your function, if you choose to accept it, is to maintain the Vajra cube.
The Vajra cube sounds like something from a Marvel movie.
It represents a perfectly balanced tensegrity structure, immovable. If you can hold that vertical alignment feet in the earth, head in the sky, you act as an antibody for the planetary logos.
An antibody?
Yes. An antibody doesn't hate the virus. It just recognizes something that doesn't belong, a disruption in the pattern, and it neutralizes it. It restores balance.
The text mentions utilizing the azure light of the ope.
It's a visualization. The avim is the seed syllable of the heart. The azure light is that high-pressure sanitation fluid. When you encounter a sinkhole, you don't run. You shine that light into it until the pressure equalizes.
So instead of being a victim of the environment, you become the thermostat. You set the temperature.
So you set the pressure.
There's a status update at the very end of the text. It reads like a military dispatch. Sphaya is active, the Nagas are pinned, the gate is guarded. What do you make of that?
It's incredibly cryptic, but it feels triumphant. Sphaya implies a bursting open like a seed pod exploding. It suggests that despite the Kali Yuga, despite the knots, the energy is breaking through.
And Nagas are pinned.
That a primal downward pull, the depression, the gravity, the addiction, it's being held in check. It's pinned to the mat.
And the gate is guarded.
Meaning the vertical connection is secure. We aren't cut off. As long as there are people doing the inversion, the line to the sky remains open.
So let's bring this all the way back down to Earth. We started with that feeling of being twisted in a crowd.
The torsion.
We learned that it's not just in our heads, it's physics. High pressure flows to low pressure. We learned that we get drained because we let ourselves become food for these low-pressure sinkholes.
We let ourselves be small objects in a big, hungry world.
And the solution is the inversion. Flip the script. Make the world a small object in your big mind.
Metaphysical sanitation.
It's a lot to take in.
Yeah.
But I think for anyone who struggles with being too sensitive, this is a game changer. It stops you from playing defense and lets you play offense.
It turns sensitivity into a power source. Instead of absorbing the poison, you dilute it.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, this was a heavy one. What is the one thing, the provocation you want the listener to carry into their week?
I want you to test the hypothesis. The next time you feel that drain, whether it's on social media, in a traffic jam, or in a meeting, don't just suffer through it. Stop. Close your eyes for a split second and ask yourself, is this thing outside of me attacking me? Or is this a tiny ripple happening inside my vast awareness?
Try to be the sky, not the tent.
Exactly. See if you can flush the vacuum.
I'm going to try it, though maybe not at Raymond James Stadium anytime soon. I'll work my way up to that.
Start with a coffee shop.
Sounds like a plan. Thanks for diving deep with us. Keep your knots loose and your pressure high.
And stay balanced.
I want you to look at your coffee cup for a second, or your steering wheel, or even just your own hand. They're solid objects.
That's what our senses tell us, certainly.
But we know, thanks to physics, that they're mostly empty space, just atoms vibrating. But today's deep dive, it takes that idea and pushes it into, honestly, some pretty wild territory. We're looking at a text called Toroidal Mechanics of the New Rita. And its central premise is that the only reason anything holds a shape, the only reason you aren't just, a puddle of chaotic energy on the floor, is because of how you manage pressure.
Specifically, how you spin that pressure.
Right. We're talking about the torus, the donut. But we were talking about sprinkles today. We are talking about the geometric engine of the universe.
Right.
Our mission for this deep dive is to unpack this text and really understand the difference between a Dausarī, which is apparently what we want to be, and an egregore, which, well, it sounds like a D&D monster, but is actually something much scarier.
It's a fascinating stack of research. I mean, it blends this high-level geometry with what looks like ancient metaphysics. It essentially argues that there are only two ways to exist.
Okay.
You are either a self-sustaining fountain or you are a collapsing sinkhole.
A fountain or a sinkhole. I love that. Nice. So let's set the visual stage before we get into the heavy mechanics. The text talks about the new Rita. What are we actually looking at here? If I could see this energy field, what would I see?
So you have to start with the axis. Imagine a vertical rod running right through the center of your body. The text calls this the spindle.
Okay, vertical pole. Got it.
And this axis has three critical anchor points. At the very top, you have the Randra. Think of it as the North Pole. In the center, the Hridaya or the heart. And at the bottom, the Kunda.
And these are physical locations, or more like energy centers.
In this context, you should think of them as pressure valves. Now, if that axis is the spindle, the torus is the spinning thread. Imagine energy rushing up that center pole, spraying out the top, wrapping around the outside of your body, and sucking back in at the bottom.
Oh, like a magnetic field around a magnet?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But here's the key insight from the text. It spins so fast that it creates the appearance of a solid shell.
Oh, I see. Like a fan blade. When the fan is off, it's just 3 blades, But when it's on high, it looks like a solid disc.
Precisely. The source material argues that what we consider matter or form is actually just a pressure differential spinning at incredible velocity. You are effectively a walking, talking, high-speed donut of energy.
So we are defined by our spin. That's a cool image. But the text gets really specific about how that spin works. It's not just, energy moves around. There's a specific anatomy to the flow. Right. If you want to be a Dausarī, which I'm gathering is the healthy version of this, you have to breathe in a very specific way. Not lung breathing, but geometric breathing.
Exactly. It breaks down the breath of the torus into 3 distinct stages. And if any one of these fails, the system collapses.
So walk us through the cycle. Where does it start?
It starts with inhalation, the suction phase. This happens at the North Pole, at the Randra.
So energy is coming down into the top of the head.
In this model, yes.
Right.
It creates a vacuum that pulls vayu, or wind, atmospheric signal into the system. That's step 1.
Okay.
Step 2 is compression. That energy travels down the axis to the Hordaya, the 0 point.
The center of the storm.
The eye of the hurricane, yeah. Here, the energy is compressed and concentrated. And then, because you can't compress energy forever, you hit step 3. Exhalation. Radiant.
It explodes outward.
It pushes down to the cocoon to the South Pole and expands out. But, and this is the part that makes it a torus and not just a laser beam, it wraps around the outside of the field and climbs back up to the top to be sucked in again.
It recycles itself.
It creates a closed loop of flow, but it's an open system for energy. It's a fountain. Think about a fountain in a park.
Right.
The water shoots up, falls down into the basin, and gets pumped back up. It's the same water, constantly moving, constantly refreshing.
That's a really helpful visual. A fountain isn't holding water, it's processing water.
Exactly. And the source material highlights one engineering term that is absolutely critical here, laminar flow.
Yeah, I remember this from physics class, but refresh us. Laminar versus turbulent.
So imagine opening a faucet. If you open it just right, the water looks like a clear, solid glass rod. It's perfectly smooth. That is laminar flow.
Okay.
The layers of fluid are sliding past each other with 0 friction. But if you crank the faucet too high, or if the pipe is rough, the water gets fizzy and chaotic. It sprays everywhere. That's turbulence.
So in the context of our energy donut, we want the glass rod.
We need the glass rod. The text says that for a Dausarī, the internal vayu moves through that central axis with laminar perfection.
But most of us, we're probably a bit fizzy, aren't we?
Most of us are dealing with what the text calls granthus. These are psychoenergetic knots. Think of them like rust or calcium buildup in that pipe. When the energy hits a granthi, it creates turbulence. It wobbles the axis.
So if I have knots, maybe that's stress, trauma, rigid beliefs, my flow isn't smooth. It's chopping.
And if it's chopping inside, it can't form that perfect shell outside.
Right.
But if you do clear the pipe, if the granthus are pierced, as the text puts it, you get this incredible phenomenon.
Which is?
The Vajra cube.
I love this term. Vajra implies diamond or thunderbolt, right? Yeah. Indestructible.
Yes. It's a geometric stability.
Yeah.
Because the pressure is flowing so fast and so smoothly, the field becomes, hard as a diamond. Not because it's a wall, but because of its momentum.
It's like that high-pressure hose again. If you spray a fire hose, you can hit the stream with a baseball bat, and the bat will just bounce off. The water is just water, but the pressure makes it solid.
Exactly. The text says that for a Dausarī with a Vajra cube effect, external winds or negativity just slide right around the curvature. You don't have to fight them.
Wow.
They literally cannot find purchase on your field because you are flowing too efficiently.
So protection isn't about building a thicker wall. It's about flowing faster.
It is protection through momentum and geometric integrity. That is the Dausarī, the radiant fountain.
Okay, so that's the goal. We all want to be diamonds made of flow, but the source material spends a lot of time warning us about the opposite. The nightmare scenario, the broken torus.
The macro egregore.
And the example they use is oddly specific. I didn't expect to be talking about the NFL in a deep dive about sacred geometry, but here we are. They talk about Raymond James Stadium.
It is a perfect massive scale example of toroidal collapse.
Walk us through this. I'm sitting in the stands. The game is on. Why is this a broken torus? It looks like a bowl. It seems pretty structured.
Think about the direction of the flow. In the fountain model, energy goes up, out, and wraps back around. It gives back what it takes.
Right. Reciprocity.
Now look at the stadium. You have 60,000 people. The architecture is a bowl. The event is in the center. every single person's attention is being sucked down and in toward the field.
Okay, so we have a massive inhalation, massive suction.
But where is the exhalation? Where does that energy go?
Well, I mean, usually it just stays there, or it dissipates.
Exactly. The source notes that the participants in this structure are capped. They have unopened rhindrus. The energy rushes in, but it hits a dead end. It cannot travel back up a vertical axis to recirculate.
So the pipe is clogged at the bottom.
It's worse than clogged. The return loop is missing entirely. So instead of a fountain, you get a sinkhole or a whirlpool. The text describes it as a torus that has lost its return flow.
And this is where it gets creepy, because the text says if a system can't recycle its own energy,
it has to steal it.
It creates a mouth.
That is the technical definition of an egregore here. It is a collapsing pressure system that must constantly consume external life force, just to maintain its structural integrity.
Because it's feeding.
It feeds on the attention and the emotion of the crowd just to stop itself from imploding.
So when we say the energy in the stadium was electric, we're actually describing a massive vampire.
In terms of physics, yes. It is a parasitic geometric structure. It creates a vacuum that demands to be filled.
That creates a terrifying duality. You have the Dausarī, which generates energy, and the egregore, which consumes it. And this leads us to the most practical part of the text, I think, the intersect dynamics.
What happens when the fountain meets the sinkhole?
Right, because we don't live in caves. We walk through cities, we go to stadiums, we work in stressful offices, which are probably mini egregores. So let's say I'm a Dausarī, I've got my laminar flow, I'm feeling good, and I walk past a chaotic crowd or a mouth. What physically happens to my field?
Well, nature abhors a vacuum. High pressure always wants to equalize with low pressure. The massive suction of the egregore, that sinkhole, will try to hook the outer edge of your radiant field.
It tries to grab my donut.
It wants to siphon your pressure to fill its own void. The text calls this phase locking.
Phase locking, like when two pendulums start swinging together.
Exactly. The chaos wants you to sync up with it. It wants to drag you into its rhythm. And if you are not careful, if you react with fear, or if you engage with it on its level, you suffer from Preta Torsion.
Preta. That's a Sanskrit term, right? Usually means hungry ghost.
Yes. In this geometric context, think of it as distortion caused by hunger or craving. The suction pulls on your field. Your nice, round, stable donut shape gets stretched. It becomes an ovoid, an egg shape pointing toward the drain.
I think we've all felt that. You walk into a room where everyone is angry or stressed, and you physically feel that pull. You feel tight. You feel bent out of shape. That's literal here.
It is literal. You are being geometrically distorted by the suction of a larger, lower pressure system.
So what's the fix? Because my instinct, and I think everyone's instinct, is to pull back, to contract, to build a wall and say, no, stay away.
And the text says that is the worst thing you can do. Contraction just creates more tension, which makes you more brittle. The source suggests a radical move called the Virat Rupa Inversion.
This is the part I had to read 3 times. It sounds completely counterintuitive.
It is. Virat Rupa refers to a cosmic form, a form of massive expansion. The strategy is don't shrink, don't pull away. Instead, expand your central axis.
Expand the spindle.
Expand the diameter of your internal column. You make your vacuum bigger than theirs.
Wait, so instead of me being a little donut standing next to a big hungry donut, I expand my center until I encompass the whole stadium.
Precisely. You contextually swallow the chaos. By expanding your axis, you change the topology. The turbulent flow of the stadium, or the angry person, or the stressful meeting, it stops being an external threat. It becomes a small spinning eddy inside your massive column of silence.
That's a power move.
It's a masterstroke of pressure management. You aren't fighting the turbulence, you are containing it. You are saying, I am the larger context.
You're not eating me. You're just a little fidget spinner inside my soul.
I suspect the ancient texts didn't use the term fidget spinner, but that the physics hold up. You become the primary organizing principle. The Vaikhari cube's stability comes from being vast, not from being hard.
That completely flips the idea of peace on its head. We usually think peace means finding a quiet room away from the noise. This suggests peace is a capacity issue.
Correct. If you are disturbed by the noise, your container's too small. If you expand the container, the noise is still there, but it no longer disturbs the geometry.
Man, okay. But there's a mechanism underneath this I want to touch on. Because you can't just decide to be big. You have to have the battery power to sustain it. The text gets under the hood and talks about red and white drops.
The Larity engine.
Yeah. Now, I've heard these terms in yoga and tantra, usually in very esoteric ways, but this text maps them strictly to physics, to forces.
Right. Forget the mysticism for a second and just think about magnets. To have a torus, you need two opposing forces working in perfect tension.
Push and pull?
The white drop is associated with the North Pole, the Randra. The text defines it as centripetal force. It is cold.
Centripetal means pulling inward, gravity.
Yes. It's the force of cohesion. It pulls everything toward the center axis. If you only had this, you'd collapse into a black hole.
Okay, and the red drop?
The red drop is the South Pole, the Kunda. It is centrifugal, hot. It pushes outward. It's the force of radiation and expansion. If you only had this, you'd explode and dissipate into nothing.
So you have the cold white force trying to crush you into a point, and the hot red force trying to blow you apart.
And the magic, the Dausarī state, happens when these two are perfectly balanced at the Hridaya, the heart.
The 0 point.
When the cold pull and the hot push are equal, they lock into place. The text calls this noospheric tensegrity.
Tensegrity, that's a Buckminster Fuller word. Tension plus integrity. Like a suspension bridge. It stands up because of the tension cables, not in spite of them.
Exactly. The structure becomes self-supporting. It creates a self-sustaining standing wave.
Yeah.
You don't need to put effort into holding your shape anymore. The physics does it for you.
And the payoff, if you can actually hit this balance point.
Immunity.
Immunity to what?
The text calls it immunity to the Preta Torsion of the Kali Yuga, which is a very fancy way of saying you become immune to the twisting, distorting pressures of the chaotic age we live in. You don't get bent out of shape by the egregore because your internal pressure system is stronger than the external suction.
It's fascinating because it takes these ideas that usually feel like good vibes or positive thinking, stay centered, and it turns them into structural engineering.
It demystifies it. If your red force is too strong, if you're too manic, too expressive, too out there, you blow out. You have no center. If your white force is too strong, if you're too rigid, too introverted, too controlling, you collapse. You starve.
You need the dynamic tension, the hum of the engine.
That balance creates the open system that can last forever. That is the definition of the new Rita.
We've covered a massive amount of ground here, from donuts to stadiums to red and white drops. I want to bring this back to Earth for a minute. The source material has a summary table that breaks human existence down into 3 states. I think it serves as a great diagnostic tool.
It's a checklist for your own energy field.
Let's recap them quickly. State number 1, the Dausarī.
The Dausarī. Your axis is open. Your flow is laminar, smooth, and silent. You are recirculating your own energy, and the result is a radiant shield. You are a fountain. You walk into a room, and you add to the pressure. You don't take from it.
Okay. State number 2, the toxic human.
This is the middle ground, where most people probably drift in and out. The axis is capped or clogged. You have granthus. The flow is turbulent. You're leaking.
And the result of that?
Localized suction. You're draining the people around you just a little bit because you can't process your own flow. You're needy. You're reactive.
And finally, state number 3, the macro egregore.
The worst case scenario. The axis is effectively absent. The flow is an inward vortex. The result is a massive vacuum, the mouth. It consumes. It has no life of its own. It only survives by eating yours.
It really changes how you look at fatigue, doesn't it?
Completely. Yeah. We tend to think of energy as a fuel tank. I'm out of gas. But this suggests energy is about flow. If you're tired, maybe it's not that you're empty. Maybe it's that your return loop is broken. You aren't recycling.
Or, and this is the scary part, you are in an environment that is phase-locking with you and siphoning your pressure. You're standing next to a drain.
Which brings us right back to that Virat Rupa inversion. The solution isn't to run away, and it isn't to fight. It's to outscale the problem.
That's the thought I want to leave everyone with. We spend so much time trying to protect our energy by making ourselves smaller, hiding, putting up barriers. But the physics suggests the opposite.
Expansion is the ultimate defense.
So the next time you feel that drain, whether it's the news, a crowd, or just a bad Tuesday, ask yourself, are you trying to pull away? Or can you expand your internal axis until that external chaos is just a small spin inside your own column?
Can you hold the noise without being moved by it? That is the question.
A powerful question for the week. Thanks for diving deep into the geometry with us. Check your flow, keep that axis open, and remember, be the fountain, not the sinkhole. We'll see you on the next deep dive.
Stay centered. I want you to try a little experiment with me. Wherever you are right now, just close your eyes for a second.
Yeah.
Now imagine you've just walked into a massive football stadium.
Okay.
A real coliseum of concrete and steel. But here's the catch.
Yep.
The game ended, Maybe 3 hours ago.
So it's late.
That's late. The floodlights are off. Maybe just those flickering, buzzing yellow security lights are left. The stands are completely empty. The 65,000 screaming fans, they've all gone home.
It's dead silent.
It's dead silent.
That's silent.
But is it empty?
It's a very specific, very visceral feeling, isn't it? The air feels thick.
Yes.
It feels heavy, almost like there's static electricity, clinging to your skin.
Exactly. It feels occupied. And most of us, we just brush that off. We say, oh, it's just a creepy vibe, or maybe it's the acoustics of a big empty bowl.
Right.
But today's deep dive is going to challenge that. We're looking at this fascinating and honestly kind of bizarre source text. It's titled The Taxonomy of Noospheric Forms. And it argues that what you're feeling in that stadium isn't just a mood. No.
It's a literal, structural, energetic form, like a physical weight.
And what I find so compelling about this text is that it doesn't treat these feelings as, vague spirituality or ghost stories.
Right. It's not spooky.
Not at all. It treats them as engineering. It treats them as physics specifically, the physics of the noosphere, or collective consciousness. It maps out exactly why the air feels heavy, and maybe more importantly, why that heaviness might actually be hazardous to you if you don't know how to handle it.
The terminology in here is absolutely wild. I mean, we're going to be talking about sutured egregores, husking egregores, talic hunger, and something called the Dausarī.
It does read like hard sci-fi.
It really does. But as I was going through the notes, I kept having these moments of recognition. Like, I've felt these things 1,000 times. I just never had a word for them.
And that's the utility of a good taxonomy. It gives you a handle on reality. If you can name it, you can navigate it.
And the core mission for this deep dive is pretty practical. We need to help you distinguish between two very different types of collective energy. One is a sutured egregore, which is a living, functional engine of identity.
And the other?
The other is a husking egregore, which is, well, it's an energetic ghost. It's the waste product.
And the stakes here are personal. The text defines the listener, you and me, as the Dausarī, or the observer. And the warning is clear. If you walk through these energetic fields without understanding the mechanics, you risk getting, and this is their term, burnt out.
Right. You become a filter for metaphysical waste. And nobody wants to be the filter.
So let's get into the mechanics then. We have to start with this concept of the egregore. Now, usually when you see this word, it's associated with, occult magic or spooky groupthink. But this source seems to have a much more mechanical, almost neutral definition. So how should we be picturing an egregore here?
In this context, I'd say strip away the mysticism for a second. Think of an egregore simply as a collective thought structure that has gained autonomy.
Okay, so it's like software running on the hardware of human minds.
That's a great way to put it. It's a pattern that exists because enough people hold it in their heads at the same time. But the text makes a critical distinction that changes everything. Is the egregore sutured or is it husking?
Okay, let's start with the healthy version, the sutured egregore. The text calls this the active identity. The examples it lists are things like man, American, or doctor.
Doctor is the perfect example to visualize this.
Okay.
Think about what happens when a med student finally becomes a doctor. They put on the white coat. They adopt a specific cadence of speech, a posture, a way of looking at a patient.
Yeah.
They aren't inventing that behavior from scratch evermore.
No, they're stepping into a role.
Nope.
It's like putting on a suit that's already been tailored for them.
It's more than a suit. The text argues that because millions of people over generations have believed in the identity of the doctor, that concept has become this massive, stable structure in the noosphere.
And when the text says it's sutured, what does that mean?
It means it's stitched directly to the planetary axis.
Okay, pause there. Planetary axis. That sounds incredibly abstract. Are we talking about like the North and South Pole?
No, think of the planetary axis as the main power grid of reality. The central vertical line where, truth, vitality, and meaning flow. Because the concept of doctor is useful. It heals people, it organizes society, it has a purpose, it gets plugged into that main grid.
So it has a license to exist.
Exactly.
It has a steady, legitimate power supply. It's not running on batteries.
Precisely. And that power supply is a loop. This is the pseudo-vertical dynamic the text talks about. The participants, the actual doctors and patients, use their randra to feed it.
Randra. Okay, another one of those terms. From the context, it seems to imply an opening, like an aperture in the human system.
Yes. Think of the Randra as your personal connection point, your channel for life force. Every time a doctor acts like a doctor and every time a patient trusts the doctor, they are pushing energy up into this massive collective structure.
They're feeding the egregore.
They're feeding it, but the egregore gives something back. It's not just taking.
Right. It's a trade.
Exactly. It provides the template. It says, here is your authority, here's your knowledge, here is how you handle a crisis. You give it life force. It gives you structure. It creates a stable identity so you don't have to figure out how to be a healer from scratch.
So in this model, it's actually a support system. Is it? Is it a parasite? Because that's usually the accusation thrown at these concepts, that they steal our individuality.
The source explicitly says no, not in this case. A sutured egregore doesn't act as a sink. It isn't a drain on your battery because it's already full. It's being constantly fed from the top down by the collective belief. It has a stable economy of energy.
The metaphor I really liked in the notes was the functioning engine.
It's a great visual.
Yeah, a functioning engine is hot, it's loud, it's burning fuel.
Yeah.
But it's efficient. It's moving the car. It's not trying to, steal gas from the car next to it because it has its own fuel line connected to the tank.
That is the perfect way to understand it. When you inhabit a healthy identity, whether it's your professional role, your role as a parent, your national identity, you are stepping into a machine that is running smoothly.
It feels stable.
You feel supported by it. It's a functional organ of the planetary consciousness.
Okay, so that's the day mode. The engine is running, the lights are on, the grid is connected. But the source material spends most of its time warning us about what happens when the plug gets pulled.
Yes.
We have to look at the dark side. The husking egregore.
And this is where the physics of the stadium comes back into play. And I think this is where you really need to pay attention because we encounter these every single day.
Right. So let's go back to that empty arena. The game is over.
Think about the energy during the game. You had 65,000 people. The text calls them Brahma egos, which just means individual creators of reality.
Okay.
They were all focused on one singular point. The game, screaming, hoping, crying, hating the referee.
That is a massive amount of psychic voltage. It creates a unified field.
Huge. For 3 hours, that stadium was a sutured egregore. It was plugged into the axis. It was alive. But then, the whistle blows.
Game over. People go home to beat the traffic.
And this is the crucial moment. The text says the fans unplug their axes. They withdraw their attention.
So that sutured, that stitch to the main power grid is ripped out.
It's ripped out. The power source is gone. But the energy, thermodynamics says energy doesn't just disappear.
Right. It has to go somewhere.
Exactly. The energy is stranded. The source describes this as massive torsion. And think about the quality of energy at a football game. It's tribal.
It's aggressive.
It's aggressive. It's heavy. The text uses the word talic.
Talic. I looked this up. It relates to the Sanskrit word tala, which means bottom or the soles of the feet or even the underworld. So it implies something. Subterranean.
Yes. Talic implies a heavy, downward-pulling hunger. It's low vibration. So when the people leave, that energy doesn't just float up to the sky.
It's too heavy.
It's too heavy, it settles, it becomes a stagnant pool in the bowl of the stadium.
It's like smoke in a bar, but heavier, like an invisible fog that just sinks to the floor.
Heavier than smoke. The text calls it high-density vayu, or wind. Because the vertical connection is broken, that column of light is gone. Now you just have this swirling blob of aggression and adrenaline trapped in the architecture.
And since it's cut off from the grid, it must be starving. It has no source.
It becomes a toroidal vacuum.
A vacuum. Okay, that changes the dynamic completely. A vacuum sucks.
It has to. It is trying to survive. Contrast this with the functioning engine we talked about. The text describes the husk as a hot engine block cooling in the dark.
Wow. That is such an evocative image, you can almost hear the metal ticking as it contracts.
It still has mass, it still has residual heat, but it has no spark plugs. It has no fuel line. It's slowly dying, dissipating into the dirt.
The text says it's sinking into subhorizontal layers.
It's literally decomposing energetically.
So this brings us to the danger. Enter the Dausarī. Enter me, taking a shortcut through the empty parking lot or walking into the stadium to clean up the trash.
You walk in, and what are you? You're a living, breathing human being. You have a Randra. You are plugged into the axis of life.
So in terms of physics,
You are a high-pressure system walking into a low-pressure vacuum.
and physics takes over. High pressure rushes to low pressure.
The husk is an energetic ghost. It's unconsciously trying to use your suction to stabilize its own collapsing form. It feels your vertical axis, your life force, and it reflexively grabs at it.
So it's trying to plug itself into me, like I'm some sort of portable battery.
It's trying to use you as a ground wire. It's a little different than a battery. A battery powers something up. A ground wire allows a surge of electricity to escape safely into the earth.
Okay, that sounds menacing. But the text makes a point to say this isn't evil, right? It's not a demon in a movie waiting to jump scare me.
Correct, and that nuance is vital. If you treat it like a demon, you get scared, which actually makes you more vulnerable because fear loosens your own energy. The source describes the husking egregore as hungry but dumb. It has no intelligence. The intelligence left with the crowd. This is just residual mechanics. It's entropy.
It doesn't want to possess your soul.
No, it just wants to discharge its heat.
Discharge its entropy. Can we unpack that? Because that sounds like something a sci-fi weapon does.
Imagine the husk is full of heat, metaphysical waste, anxiety, aggression. It needs to dump that heat somewhere to cool down. If you walk by and you aren't spatially aware, you become the path of least resistance.
I become the lightning rod.
Yes. It dumps that talic hunger through your body and into the earth. It uses you to ground itself.
And how does that feel to the victim? Do I suddenly start cheering for the home team? Do I get angry?
Rarely do you pick up the specific content. Usually you feel the raw quality of the energy, but stripped of context. You might feel a sudden, irrational wave of irritability. Or, more likely, the text says you will feel burnt out or twisted.
A sudden drain.
A sudden drain. You walk in feeling fine, and 10 minutes later you feel exhausted, heavy, maybe a bit dirty or off.
I'm thinking about this beyond stadiums now. This explains so much. Arguments, for example.
Oh, absolutely. It applies to any high-intensity collective event.
I mean, think about a domestic fight. Screaming, crying, high emotion in the living room, then one person storms out.
The suture of the argument is broken.
But the energy in the living room.
It's still there. It's a husk. It's a swirling vortex of anger that has lost its purpose but kept its weight.
And then a third person, maybe a kid or a roommate, walks into the room 5 minutes later. They didn't hear the fight, but they walk in and wham, they feel sick, they feel angry.
They just walked into a cooling engine block. They're being used to ground the torsion of an argument they weren't even part of.
They're metabolizing the waste energy of someone else's conflict.
Yeah, exactly.
That is terrifyingly practical. It makes you realize how much mood is actually structure.
It is. And the text provides a really helpful comparison table to visualize this. It helps you diagnose what you're dealing with so you don't take it personally.
Let's run through that. First is axis type.
The sutured identity, the healthy one, is pseudo-vertical. It connects up and down. It has flow. The husk is purely horizontal. It just spreads out like an oil spill.
Then pressure state.
The suture is regulated. It's an exchange identity for energy. The husk is a vacuum. It only takes. It takes to prevent its own dissolution.
And the most important one, the relation to us, the listener.
With a sutured identity, you walk through it. You wear the identity of the doctor or the teacher. But with the husk, you walk past it and you feel the pull.
The pull. That's the red flag. That feeling of something sticky or draining trying to latch on. Okay, so we've diagnosed the problem. We know there are invisible vacuums of waste energy waiting to use us as ground wires. So the million-dollar question, how do we stop it? The text introduces a concept called metaphysical sanitation.
Which sounds like the worst job title imaginable.
Hi, I'm here to plunge the noosphere. But functionally, it's a cool concept.
It is. It reframes the role of the conscious observer, the Dausarī. The text says the primary danger is that if you aren't pinned to the rock seat, the husk will use you.
Rock seat. This sounds like Meditation 101. What exactly does the text mean by it in this technical context?
It's a metaphor for internal stability, gravity. If your own energy is wavering, if you are distracted, emotional, or loose, you're an easy target for that vacuum.
You're light, so you get sucked in.
But if you are in your rock seat, you are solid. You have more mass than the ghost.
So if I'm solid, the husk can't grab me.
It's more subtle. It's about not becoming the filter. Think about a car's air filter or a vacuum cleaner bag. It catches all the dirt so the machine can run. But eventually that filter is gross.
It's clogged. It has to be thrown away.
Yeah, and I definitely don't want to be the trash bag for the stadium's anger. The source advises that you must remain the azure light.
Okay, we're getting mystical again. Azure light. Is this visualization? What is the function of this light?
Functionally, azure light represents a frequency of consciousness that is clear, detached, and self-luminous. It's non-stick.
Non-stick. I like that.
When you encounter this heavy, husking energy, you don't fight it, because fighting it is engaging with it, and you don't absorb it. You allow the exhaust to be transmuted.
Transmuted by what? If I'm not grounding it, where does it go?
The text mentions the HUM.
The HUM, all caps.
Yes, it refers to the primordial background vibration of reality, the underlying current that dissolves all forms eventually. So the technique is this. You walk through the stadium, you feel the heaviness, you acknowledge the talic hunger, but you stand in your azure light, your detached awareness.
You let the energy pass near you.
But you don't let it touch your mani-gem.
Mani-gem being my core self, my soul.
Your essential crystalline center. If you do this right, your presence allows the HUM to neutralize the waste naturally. You aren't the ground wire, you're just the catalyst. The energy hits your light, realizes it can't stick, and dissolves back into the background static.
So it's about boundaries, energetic boundaries. It's saying, I see you, heavy energy. I respect that you are starving, but I am not your food, and I am not your toilet.
Precisely. And here's the beautiful part. In doing so, you actually perform a service. You aren't just protecting yourself. By holding your rock seat and shining that light, you help dissipate that stagnant pool effectively.
You're sanitizing the space.
Simply by not being corrupted by it.
So you're cleaning up the room just by standing there and not freaking out.
You are accelerating the decay of the ghost so it can return to the earth naturally, rather than through someone's nervous system.
That brings a whole new meaning to keeping your cool. It's not just about social composure. It's about metaphysical hygiene.
It really connects to the bigger picture of how we interact with our environments. We often think of ourselves as separate from the places we walk through. We think, I am me, and that is a building.
But we're not separate.
No. This taxonomy of noospheric forms suggests we are part of an ecosystem. There are living ideas, and there are dying ghosts of ideas. Both are real. Both interact with our biology.
The planetary complex, as the summary calls it, is made of both.
Yes. The identity egregores, the sutured ones, are the memories and programs of the planet. They run the show. They tell us who to be. The husking egregores are the metaphysical waste, or exhaust.
And just like in a physical city, you need a sanitation system.
If you don't deal with the waste, it piles up in the streets.
And we, the listeners, the Dausarī, we're the sanitation workers.
Or perhaps the immune system. We ensure the waste doesn't cause an infection. We ensure the exhaust doesn't become the atmosphere.
This was a dense one, so let's recap the main takeaways for everyone before we wrap up.
Sure. First, we have the sutured egregore. The active identity man, doctor, American. It's pseudo-vertical, connected to the axis, and fed by the people. It's a functioning engine. It's safe to inhabit because it's powered from the top down.
Right. Then we have the husking egregore, the empty stadium, the cooling engine block.
This is the energetic ghost. It has lost its connection to the axis. It's purely horizontal. It creates a vacuum and possesses talic hunger.
And it wants to stabilize its collapsing form by grabbing onto a passerby.
Exactly. And finally, our role, the hazard and the solution.
The hazard is becoming a lightning rod, getting burned out by grounding that entropy.
And the solution is metaphysical sanitation. Staying in your rock seat, embodying the azure light, and letting the hum transmute the energy so it doesn't stick to your mani-gem.
It's funny, even though the language is so esoteric, mani-gem, noospheric forms, talic hunger, the practical advice is incredibly grounded.
Well, yeah.
It's about not letting the bad vibes of a place drain your battery.
That's the beauty of it. It's high-concept metaphysics with a very practical application. It validates that feeling of heaviness you get in certain places and gives you permission to protect yourself from it. You don't have to carry the weight of an empty stadium home with you.
I love that. You don't have to carry the weight home.
You really don't. It's not yours to carry.
Well, this has certainly changed how I'm going to feel the next time I walk past a concert hall at 2 a.m. It's not just quiet. It's cooling.
Just remember to check your rock seat.
Always. That brings us to the end of this deep dive into the taxonomy of noospheric forms. We've covered the living engines of identity and the hungry ghosts of the aftermath.
It's a lot to process, but once you start seeing the world through this lens of vertical connections versus horizontal vacuums, it explains a lot of human behavior.
You see who is plugged in.
And who is just looking for a battery.
It really does. So here is a final provocative thought for you to mull over as you go about your week. The next time you walk into a space that feels heavy or drained or just wrong, ask yourself, are you holding your rock seat? Or are you accidentally acting as a lightning rod for an energy that has nowhere else to go?
And if you feel that pull, remember, you don't have to fix it, you just have to shine.
Thanks for diving in with us. Stay grounded out there.
So have you ever walked past a massive stadium right after the game let out?
Oh, yeah.
The crowd's gone, the parking lot is, emptying out, the janitors are sweeping up.
Right.
But the air still feels, I don't know, heavy?
The space itself is humming. Or vibrating even.
Exactly. Or like you walk into a room where two people just had a huge argument. They're silent now, maybe not even there, but you just feel that vibe is so oppressive.
And you want to turn right around and walk out.
You do. And we usually just write it off. We say, oh, I'm just being sensitive, or, I'm imagining things.
We dismiss it as psychological projection.
Right. But today's deep dive, it's going to challenge that completely. We're looking at a text that argues this isn't just a feeling, it's physics.
It's the mechanics of the invisible.
And I have to warn you, the title of this source is maybe the most intense one we have ever had on the show.
Oh, boy.
Are you ready? It's called The Mechanics of Noospheric Drainage and Egregoric Grounding.
Try saying that 5 times fast.
I can barely say it once. And it talks about something called the new Rita.
Which sounds incredibly technical.
It does. It feels a little sci-fi. But when you strip away the jargon words like husking egregore, what we're really looking at is the plumbing system of collective human consciousness.
That is the perfect way to frame it. It's the plumbing.
Yeah.
We think of thoughts and emotions as these ethereal things that just vanish. But the core idea here is that they don't. Energy doesn't just disappear.
It's conservation of energy, right? It has to go somewhere.
Exactly. So the mission for today is to figure out when 65,000 people are screaming at a football game, where does all that energy go?
Does it just float away?
And more importantly, if you're the person walking past that stadium, why does it feel like that energy is trying to, jump onto you?
Ugh, that feeling of being slimed by someone else's mood.
And that jumping mechanism is what we really need to unpack. Because for you, listening, this isn't just theory. If you've ever felt suddenly drained or anxious for no reason after being in a crowd.
This text says it's not psychological.
It's mechanical.
Okay, let's get into the mechanics then. The text starts with this idea of the husk. So let's stick with that stadium. You've got 65,000 people. The text calls them Brahma egos.
Which is a whole other thing.
Right. And they're pumping out adrenaline, excitement, rage. The game ends. They leave. What is left behind?
What the source material calls torsional heat.
Torsional, like twisting.
Okay, yeah, think of it like torque. Intense emotion literally twists the atmosphere. It creates a tension. So it's like thermal exhaust.
Like how a car engine is still hot an hour after you shut it off.
Precisely. The people, the Brahma egos are gone.
Right.
But the heat signature of their collective psyche is still there.
And that's where we get into this concept of entropic sedimentation.
Entropic sedimentation.
It sounds like geology, like layers of mud settling at the bottom of a lake.
In a way, it is. But for the mind. The text explains that this leftover energy doesn't vanish. It settles. It starts to decay. And the analogy the source uses, which I find really helpful, is the planetary compost heap.
I love that image. So the stadium is basically a giant compost bin for emotional energy.
It has to be. I mean, think about it. The planet has a system for breaking down dead leaves, right?
A biological cycle.
Well, it has to have a system for breaking down psychic matter. If it didn't, we'd be choking on the rage of our ancestors.
That's a terrifying thought. So where does this composting happen?
It happens in what the text calls the subhorizontal layers of the alaya vijnana.
Alaya vijnana. Okay, we got to break that down.
Yeah. It's often translated as storehouse consciousness.
Storehouse consciousness.
So imagine a layer of reality that's just below your conscious thoughts, but kind of above the physical subatomic world. It's like the basement of the collective mind.
And the torsional heat from the stadium sinks into that basement.
Right. And it starts what the text calls a decay chain.
So it's rotting.
It's atrophying. It starts as coherent emotion, my team won, or I hate that referee. But as it sinks, it breaks apart. It fragments.
It becomes just psychic noise.
Exactly. Loses the story.
So it's not, I'm angry about the penalty kick anymore.
No. It's just raw, static anger.
And does it go away completely? Eventually?
Eventually, yeah.
Yeah.
The final stage is described as information dust.
Information dust.
At that point, the energy has lost its logoic signature, which just means it has no meaning attached to it anymore.
Yeah.
It's just raw data.
And the planetary logos, the Earth's operating system?
Recycles that dust, turns it into raw material for new forms.
Dust to dust. That makes a lot of sense. But there's a phase before it becomes dust that the text says is kind of dangerous. It mentions something called heavy water.
This is the tricky part, yeah. Before the energy fully breaks down, it gets heavy. It sinks into what they call the tala layers.
And tala implies
Deeper.
Deeper, darker. These are regions of the unconscious that are associated with hungry ghosts.
When that stadium energy is in this heavy water phase, it hasn't dissolved yet. It just lingers. It's thick.
So this is the sludge phase.
Exactly. It's sludge that hasn't composted yet. It's stuck in the drain.
That is such a creepy tactile image. It's not a ghost, it's emotional sludge.
And this leads us to the most practical part of this whole thing.
Back.
Because sometimes that sludge doesn't just sit there.
It interacts with us.
It does.
Right. This is the section that really grabbed me. The hard line the text draws between active egregores and husking egregores.
Should probably define egregore first.
Good call for anyone who hasn't heard it.
Simply put, it's a collective group mind. When enough people focus on the same thing, that focus creates a sort of entity, a structure.
It takes on a life of its own.
Right.
Okay, so what's the difference between the active kind and the husking kind?
The difference is intent. That's the key. An active egregore has a will. It has a program.
Like the examples they give.
Yeah.
A nation or a gender.
Yes. The spirit of America, masculinity, these are massive living programs.
And their goal is?
Possession. They want to replace your I with we. An active egregore wants to use your body to do things in the world.
To fight a war or buy a product.
Exactly. It wants to recruit you. It wants to drive the car.
Okay, it wants to drive the car. But the husking egregore, the stadium leftovers, is different.
It's dead. It's just residual exhaust. It has no will. It doesn't want to be you.
But the text says it still seeks you out. So if it doesn't want to possess me, what does it want?
It wants to ground itself through you. The analogy here is perfect. Static electricity.
So the stadium husk isn't a demon. It's just a giant, floating, uncharged battery.
A battery with a massive charge and nowhere to go, yeah. The text calls it high potential, but low meaning. It's hot or talic.
And the physical ground, the Earth, is neutral.
And from high school physics, we know nature hates a air.
A pressure differential.
Nature abhors a vacuum.
Mm-hmm.
The husk is desperate to discharge that energy to reach equilibrium. It needs to get from the air into the ground.
But it can't just jump through the air. It needs a conductor.
And that brings us to the listener, or as the text calls them, the Dausarī.
The Dausarī, the practitioner.
Or really, anyone who is sensitive and open in a certain way.
This is the part I was wondering about. Why does the energy pick the Dausarī? If I'm walking past that stadium with 100 other people, why does the static zap me?
Because of your vertical axis.
My posture.
Your metaphysical posture. The text says a Dausarī is someone who is sutured to both the sky, the Randra, and the earth, the Kunda.
Connected up and down.
So to that static cloud floating above, you look like a lightning rod.
So I'm the copper wire.
You are the copper wire. In a field of insulation, most people are, closed systems. They're wrapped in their own little bubbles.
They're not paying attention.
Right. But the Dausarī is open. You're noticing the vibe. You're feeling the air. The husk sees you as the path of least resistance.
That's so ironic. Being open-minded or sensitive actually makes you a target.
In this context, yeah. But it's not personal. That is so crucial.
So it's not hunting me because it hates me.
No. It's hunting you because you're the only door that's open. The vacuum seek, it's purely mechanical.
The husk leaps to you. It creates an arc and flows through you to get to the ground.
Exactly. It's fluid dynamics. It's hydraulics.
And that flow, that's what causes the symptoms.
Yep. The text calls it the burn.
I feel like I know this burn. Tell me what the source says it feels like.
Okay. It lists a sudden wave of exhaustion. You know that feeling when you just want to lie down on the pavement?
Oh, yeah. I know that feeling.
Or twist in the gut. But the most fascinating one is what they call torsional discharge.
Okay.
This is where you get unexplained flashes of the stadium's collective emotion.
Yeah.
A sudden surge of anger or despair or manic excitement that just isn't yours.
So you're suddenly furious for no reason at all.
Exactly. You are literally conducting the leftover adrenaline of 65,000 people through your nervous system.
That is terrifying, actually. To realize my sudden bad mood might just be me acting as a ground wire for a football game I didn't even go to.
It reframes the whole experience. You aren't crazy, You're just conductive.
You're not having a breakdown, you're just grounding a charge.
There you go.
So if we are these walking copper wires, how do we stop getting fried? I mean, I don't want to be the ground wire for the city's emotional garbage.
Well, the text moves into defensive posture. The Vajra cube.
The Vajra cube. Sounds like a superhero move. What's the strategy?
It gives you two main options for dealing with this vacuum seek. Option A is to become non-conductive.
The seal.
Right.
Yeah.
The goal there is to become metaphysical rubber. You pull your aura in tight.
Yeah.
And make sure there's no suture or hook for the husk to grab onto. You close the door.
You stop being a lightning rod.
You make yourself invisible to the charge. But the text says this isn't always possible. If the charge is massive, like a stadium or a riot,
It might blow the seal.
it might. Which brings us to option B.
If you can't block it, you have to handle it, becoming super conductive.
The flush.
This is where it gets really interesting. Instead of blocking the energy, you accept the discharge. But, and this is key, you don't hold it.
Correct. The text uses the word transformer, like on a power pole.
Okay, a transformer steps voltage up or down.
Yes, it takes raw, dangerous electricity and modulates it. In this technique, the Dausarī uses something called the azure light of the HEOM.
We're getting deep now. What's the function of this azure light?
Functionally, it's the step-up mechanism. It takes that raw, dirty, torsional noise and transforms it into a logoic signal before it hits your body.
So you're cleaning the electricity before it runs through your wires.
That's a great way to put it. You turn the noise into a clear signal so it passes through you without causing that twist in the gut. It just flushes straight to the ground.
But to do that, the text says there's one absolute requirement. You have to be pinned to the rock.
The rock seat. This is critical. If you're going to let a massive charge flow through you, you have to be grounded.
And not metaphorically grounded, like being humble.
No. Structurally grounded. The text is very clear. If you aren't pinned to the rock, it warns that the husk will knock you over.
Physically or mentally.
Probably both.
Yeah.
It just overwhelms the system. Think of a fire hose. If you aren't braced, it'll knock you off your feet. Being pinned to the rock means having a deep, unshakable connection to the earth. It lets you be the immovable one. The energy passes through you and you remain standing.
It's a difference between a wire that's plugged into the ground and a wire that's just dangling.
Exactly. The dangling wire flails around. The grounded wire stays still. And that's the core of the practice. It's not about avoiding these energies. It's about managing the flow.
You become the master of the circuit.
Right.
This changes how you view public spaces. I mean, we started with a stadium, but this applies to malls, subways, protests.
A protest is a huge one, a Black Friday sale. Even a viral internet moment has a physical counterpart in the servers and the people at their computers. A global husk.
Let's just look at that summary table the text gives because I think it helps make it really clear.
It's a very helpful comparison. Let's start with possession, the active egregores. The source is a living program.
And the intent is control. Action.
And the feeling is, I am this. I am angry. I am a patriot. It co-opts your identity.
It uses I. Okay. But for grounding.
The husk,
Okay.
the source is dead exhaust. The intent is just dissipation.
And the feeling isn't, I am this.
No, it's, I feel weird. I feel drained. I feel heavy.
That is such a useful diagnostic tool. Is this an identity taking over, or is this just static passing through?
And the risk is different too. With possession, the risk is losing your eye. With grounding, the risk is just the burn fatigue, stress.
It sounds exhausting.
It is, but it's manageable if you know what it is. If you treat static electricity like a demon possession, you'll react incorrectly. You might try to fight it or analyze the meaning of the anger.
But with a husk, there is no meaning.
None. You'd be analyzing trash. You don't psychoanalyze the contents of your garbage can. You just take it to the curb.
That is a liberating thought. You don't have to solve the emotion. You just have to ground it.
You ground it. You let it pass.
This has been, well, electric. We've gone from the planetary compost heap to understanding why we feel like garbage after a concert to becoming metaphysical rubber.
It's a journey through the invisible infrastructure of our cities. And frankly, it's a manual for urban survival.
It really is. And I think the biggest takeaway for me, and hopefully for you listening, is just the validation. That feeling of heaviness isn't in your head.
It's in the plumbing.
Yeah.
And once you see the husk for what it is, just waste energy seeking a drain, it loses its mystery. It becomes manageable.
You can zip up your aura or you can flush it to the ground. but you don't have to carry it home with you.
Exactly. Don't be a storage unit for other people's exhaust.
Before we sign off, I want to leave you with one last thought based on that transformer concept. The text says we can transform torsional noise into Logoic signal, turning waste into high-quality energy.
It's a form of recycling.
Yeah.
Spiritual recycling.
Right. So if we can do that with the bad vibes from a football stadium, what other invisible waste products are floating around that we're just trying to block out? What if, instead of building walls, we learn to build better transformers?
What if the noise of the modern world is actually a fuel source? We just haven't figured out how to burn cleanly yet.
Now, that is a provocative question. Maybe the noise isn't the enemy.
Maybe it's just unrefined fuel.
Something to think about the next time you're stuck in a crowd feeling the static rise. Thanks for diving deep with us.
Stay grounded.